Welcome back to the Center on Technology and Disabilities new series on supporting local education agency and state education agencies' use of research findings to support students with disabilities. This is video 5, Writing Research Questions and Matching Research Designs. In previous videos, we discussed the importance of finding and reviewing research studies with a critical eye. Lots of critical reading will position you and your colleagues within your LEA or SEA to write your own research questions and design your own studies. Writing good research questions can be the difference between a successful and unsuccessful research study. However, writing good research questions is actually more complicated than one might think. The best research questions emerge from problems of practice your LEA or SEA are experiencing and seeking to address. Here are 3 non-examples of high-quality research questions. Please pause your video to read each. For one, note the first 2 are not actually questions. Next, they're not specific with respect to the independent and dependent variables of interest. High-quality research questions have 4 distinct elements. 1. The research question should specify the dependent or outcome variable. For example, student performance on a researcher-created measure of literal comprehension questions. 2. The research question should specify the independent or treatment variable. An example, students learn using CAS Science Writer during a unit of study. 3. The hypothesized functional or causal relationship should be specified. Example, what is the relation between student comprehension when using text-to-speech compared to business-as-usual approaches? And 4. The predicted change in behavior or performance should be explicitly stated. An example, do students who learn using the CAST Science Writer outperform students who learn using another method? Here's a sample research question following these steps. In red is the dependent measure, student vocabulary performance on a weekly curriculum-based measure. In green is the independent or treatment variable, after watching content acquisition podcasts for key terms. In purple is the statement of functional relation. Is there a functional relation in improved student vocabulary? And in orange is the predicted change, compared to other students who learn with a business-as-usual approach. Again, a high-quality research question puts your team in position to design studies that will help address the problem of practice. As you're reading published studies, pay careful attention to how research questions are stated. There's a menu of research designs to choose from that should match or allow you and your team to address your research questions. Here's a list of common research designs you will see in the literature and may choose to use in your own studies. We briefly review each in this video. Some research questions can only be addressed by interviewing or observing participants. We call this qualitative research. Qualitative research is very complex and is not as simple as doing a few interviews, recording field notes, and then throwing it all together. Many people, including me, think qualitative research is just about the hardest type of research to do well. Qualitative research questions are usually exploratory in nature. Oftentimes, it may be possible to create a survey or other instrument to collect quantitative data to answer what begins as a qualitative question. However, those data will be limited in terms of how well they allow interpretation of data. For example, if you had a broad question about how students use technology during science courses, a qualitative methodology would make sense. You might interview the teacher and students about their experiences, take notes on student use, and collect artifacts such as student work samples. Again, you could answer that question with a quantitative methodology, but you would probably only generate descriptive statistics, such as percentage of time students spend using various tools, which may or may not give enough detail to really understand the teacher and student's thinking. Next is quantitative research. There are three main subtypes of quantitative research. When a researcher only has access to one group, but still wants to use numerical data to measure impact on a dependent measure, a one-group, non-experimental design might be used. One-group designs are not powerful, but are often appropriate for pilot studies. Next, when two groups are available, quasi-experimental designs can use two or more groups. However, researchers cannot randomly assign participants to groups. This typically happens in schools where students are nested within classrooms and can't be randomly assigned at the individual level for practical reasons. Quasi-experiments are very common in education research. In experimental designs, the researcher randomly assigns individuals to groups. This is often referred to as the gold standard of research. It is the gold standard because threats to validity are minimized, and results can be generalized beyond the population being studied. Here's a sample research question for an experimental design. Is there a functional relation in students' vocabulary performance on a weekly curriculum-based measure after watching content acquisition podcasts for key terms compared to other students who learn with a business-as-usual condition? Many researchers have research questions that can be addressed using both qualitative and quantitative methodologies. We call this mixed methods research. Mixed methods designs are popular with researchers because of the flexibility offered. However, it should be noted that answering qualitative and quantitative research questions within one study adds complexity. An example research question for a mixed methods design might be, is there a functional relation in students' vocabulary performance on a weekly curriculum-based measure after watching content acquisition podcasts for key terms compared to other students who learn within a business-as-usual condition? How do students report feeling about the videos? Another research approach is single case designs. In single case designs, you repeatedly measure the dependent variable for a small number of participants while keeping tight control over the independent variable. Like qualitative research, people sometimes think single case designs are easier to complete than experimental studies because of the small number of participants, but in my experience, the exact opposite is true. Despite only having 3 or 4 participants in a single case design, the need to repeatedly measure the outcome variable adds significant complexity and intensity to a study. There are multiple types of single case designs, like simple A-B designs, reversal designs where the independent variable is provided and then taken away, alternating treatment designs where 2 independent variables are introduced within the same treatment time, and multiple baseline, where usually 3 or 4 participants are in turn introduced to the independent variable and the researcher looks for replication of increases or decreases in level and trend of the measured dependent variable. The What Works Clearinghouse commissioned this white paper from Tom Cratchwell and his colleagues that lays out standards for conducting high-quality research using this design. It is recommended reading for all researchers. Survey research can accompany any of the research designs previously mentioned. A survey is a good way to very quickly and usually easily collect important data. Surveys can be problematic if your participants do not respond. Finally, because many LEAs and SEAs collect substantial amounts of data, doing studies using those data sets may be appropriate. Researchers may want to explore data from various subsets of students and for specific time periods. Research questions can be longitudinal. Once you've settled on a research design that will allow you to address your research questions, you need to plan for recording fidelity of implementation data. Fidelity of implementation is all about ensuring the intervention was provided to students in a manner consistent with instructions. If a researcher does not capture fidelity of implementation data, if and when students who receive the intervention do not benefit as anticipated, it is possible that the intervention was not provided in the manner prescribed by the researcher or training materials, and the researcher would never know. Incorrect decisions can be made regarding why the intervention did not work as planned. Also, some interventions are more powerful than others. You need to carefully consider how much exposure or dosage to an intervention is needed to be successful on your outcome measures. An intervention might be powerful, but if you do not provide students with enough exposure, you might not accurately measure student performance and decide to abandon the intervention or conclude it does not work. In summary, there's a lot of skill involved in writing good research questions. And there's lots of ways for you to design a research study. Picking the right design to address your research questions is critical. We're often limited in terms of what research designs we can actually use, so sometimes researchers have to make concessions. Thanks for watching, and please continue using videos from this series.